Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Overrun by Ross Buzzell. Narrated by Todd Mclaren. 1. End of Shore Leave.
"Come on, guys, we just got here. Do we really have to leave?"
Matthias asked as he handed the volleyball to an employee.
"Yes, we very much do have to leave,"
Justin countered while making his way to a dropship. Lance looked back at his sniper. Hope fueled him for the first time in years. He shrugged, unable to contain his joy and excitement. "I'm sorry, I really am, but Lincoln's alive, and we have to go find him." Lance turned and jogged toward the ever-filling dropship.
"Who's Lincoln?"
Matthias shouted after him.
"His older brother, labeled KIA in the Reeve Wars,"
Dexter replied, bringing up the rear.
"Oh."
Matthias paused.
"Yep. Now I bet you feel like a jerk, don't you?"
the giant teased.
"A little bit."
Lance climbed into the craft and took his place in the cockpit. Running a quick weapons check, he peeked out the window to see the last of his crew board. Justin clambered into the cockpit and stood next to the pilot. "Can I help you?" the pilot asked, receiving a cold stare down from Justin.
"Yes, you're in my seat,"
Justin replied. "I'm the dropship pilot. This is my seat."
"And I'm the better pilot, which actually makes it mine. Get up."
"May as well do it," Lance chimed in.
"What about assignment of roles and staying at one station?" the pilot asked, looking back at Lance. "That protocol is drilled into us."
"It may be, but take into consideration that he won't move until you let him fly, and if he's not buckled in, we can't take off," Lance countered. "If you give it to him, we can be underway, and you can have your ship back." The pilot huffed, unbuckled himself, and moved to the navigation seat before rebuckling himself in.
"One of these days I'm going to fly the Gladius," the pilot muttered. "What's your name, kid?"
Justin asked as he climbed into the pilot's seat and strapped in.
"I'm older than you," the pilot countered. "Didn't answer my question, old sport."
"Is this guy for real?" the pilot asked, turning toward Lance. "You get used to it," the captain replied.
"Really?"
"No," Lance chuckled. "You just learn to ignore it after a while."
"I'm right here,"
Justin announced as the engines roared to life.
"And you still haven't answered my question."
"My name's Scott," the pilot replied. "Why do you want to know?"
"Well, Scott, sometimes you just have to learn that surrendering control is the best way to get the job done,"
Justin said as they lifted off the ground.
"Now, can you put that navigational scanner to 100%? I want to make sure we don't have anyone untoward inbound while we head toward the Gladius."
"Fine," Scott said, as he fiddled with the navigational systems. They turned toward the sky, soaring for the clouds.
"Scott, I asked if you could turn that scanner all the way up,"
Justin said as he glanced toward Lance and winked.
"I did,"
Scott snapped with a shake of his head. "I think there might be some lost-in-translation issues going on," Lance said, as he leaned as far as his harness would let him. "He's wanting you to give it a little more."
"I can't give it a little more,"
Scott countered, showing the scanner at 100%. Out of the corner of his eye, Lance saw Justin spinning a finger, urging him to continue. With a huff, the SOAT shook his head and pointed at the screen. "See here, Scotty, I really think you can give it a little bit more."
"I'm giving it all she's got, Captain,"
Scott snapped.
"There it is,"
Justin declared with a laugh. Scott's expression soured as he threw a judgmental look at Lance and shook his head. "I'm mostly sorry about that," Lance chuckled. "He just wanted to see if you'd say it." "Do I even need to have the scanner on?" Scott asked.
"No, the Gladius has a much wider range than this thing does,"
Justin chimed back in.
"She'll let us know if anything's inbound."
Scott shut the scanner off. I hate you both so much, he said, as he cracked a smile. At least you're a good sport about it, Lance added, as the blue sky above them turned black, dotted with stars. Breaking free of Earth's pull, the ship's artificial gravity took over. They shot past the United Hemisphere Space Station, more of a token from a bygone era since the POS overtook space research. Justin flew them straight to the Gladius, which drifted peacefully in the void. As they entered the ship, there was hardly a rattle from them connecting with the docking clamps.
"And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how you dock a ship,"
Justin said, as he shut off the craft and slid out of his chair. "I literally could have done the exact same thing," Scott huffed, as Justin strolled by him. Lance unstrapped himself, got up, and walked over to the dropship's pilot. "I'm really sorry about that. Once Justin gets going on something, it's literally impossible to stop him. I'm going to take over his cockpit one day and see how he likes it. If that's the case, I'd practice on the flight simulator so you can get used to the controls before you do." "Yes, sir," Scott replied, as he unstrapped himself. Lance gave the pilot a pat on the shoulder as he made his way to the exit of their ship. He stepped out with the rest of the crew before taking the elevator to his cabin. The hiss of his shower filled his quarters. As he entered his bathroom, he saw Valdivia sitting on the floor with water running over her armor. "What are you doing?" he asked with a laugh.
"So much sand," she replied.
A river of sand did flow off her and down the drain. "That's what happens when you roll around on the beach. How are you feeling?" he asked, as he sat on the ground next to the shower.
"I'm sobering up," she replied,
as he rubbed her helmet.
"A little bit of a headache is coming on, though."
"Well, we'll get you some water. I'll turn down the lights in my cabin, and you can get some rest."
"That would be nice, thank you," she nodded. "Captain, I'm getting an inbound transmission from the Alcazar. Do you want me to patch it through to your cabin?"
Justin asked over the ship's intercom. Lance looked down at his flip-flop, swim trunk, and tank top outfit, and shook his head. "Absolutely not. Put it through to the communications center, and tell them I'll be right down."
"Copy that. Sending now,"
Justin replied, before cutting off the radio. "Will you be okay?" Lance asked. Valdivia nodded as she waved for him to go. Needing to shower the salt off himself before putting on his armor, the SOAT got up and put on his uniform. Grabbing his multi-tool, he slid it onto his forearm. Before he left, Lance went back into the bathroom, grabbed a cup from under the sink, filled it with water, and placed it on his nightstand. Returning to the elevator, he descended to the bridge, where he made his way to the communications center. A small blue circle blinked on the console. When he pressed it, a hologram of the Alcazar flickered to life before him. They were huddled together, whispering. Lance stood in front of them for several moments before clearing his throat. Doing so drew their attention to him. They quickly dispersed and took their positions at each of their respective podiums. "You wanted to speak with me?"
"Yes. Thank you for reporting back so quickly,"
Darla said, as she straightened out her robe.
"We've read your report, assessed the situation, and have deployed anti-AI countermeasures to the Reeve station,"
the Adoran explained. "Shouldn't we give them a chance to negotiate before destroying them?" Lance asked, tilting his head to the side.
"They will be given the opportunity to join the other Reeve factions in AI space,"
the Jarog chimed in.
"If they don't, then we'll be forced to destroy them."
"That attempt would be ill-advised," Lance countered. "These ones felt different, more advanced somehow. They didn't have biocide, but the size of their ship and what they're using to fuel it is beyond anything I've seen. Trust me, you send those AI hunters after them, and, best-case scenario, they all get shut down. Worst case, they get hacked, and now the Reeve have your fleet under their control." Their AI was more advanced than the Reeves, Andrew chimed in, raising his hand slightly. I've seen their data. Watched the simulation encounters based on the data you helped gather during the AI war, and I have to disagree with you. They'll be able to handle anything built by human hands. Lance scoffed and shook his head. I disagree. You didn't see the station they built. It was magnificent, terrifying, something humans couldn't have come up with, Lance countered. They've evolved. We need to find a different way to handle that particular faction because violence is not the answer.
All due respect, Lance. You're not as familiar with artificial intelligence as we are, the Jarog chimed in.
How many AI have you encountered? Lance asked, looking at the council member. The Jarog fell silent. He shrugged slightly, but didn't reply. Have any of you seen them in action firsthand? Or is your knowledge strictly based on what you've read? He asked. They all remained silent. I have. They completely obliterated an entire Veilus fleet. And I'm telling you, if you go against them head-on, there is no chance of beating them, Lance warned. Then how would you suggest we approach this issue? Andrew asked. The Veilus got their hands on someone who knows the location of a device known as the Conduit, Lance said. Give me permission to go after them, retrieve that contact, and get the Conduit ourselves. From there, we can use the Conduit against the Reeves and minimize casualties and collateral damage. Lance flicked his thumbs. He held his breath at the suggestion, praying that they'd go for his mission, so that he had an excuse to go after his brother on orders. Darla looked down and shook her head. She let out a sigh that brimmed with disappointment.
We know the Veilus prisoner is your brother, she revealed, before looking back to Lance. Sending you after him is a conflict of interest.
I have lobbied to have a SOAT team sent in pursuit to retrieve Lincoln and pursue the Conduit lead, Andrew added.
But a human being taken by a known problematic human faction away from a human-created artificial intelligence is not a SOAT problem, the Adaran cut in, her voice stern. Your Space Force has been given permission to pursue, but the Alcazar will not interfere in human problems.
Disbelief encompassed Lance, followed by anger. He clenched his fists so tightly they hurt as a fire lit within his gut. Taking slow, deep breaths, the captain refrained from shouting at the Alcazar member. Instead, he pointed at Andrew. A member of your own council is human. He pointed to himself. As is a SOAT. When the Alcazar was attacked, it was the best of humanity that came to the aid of your people, and then set up an organization specifically designed to bring aid to anyone who needed it, not just Alcazar races. Lance took a half step toward the hologram. His restraint slipped, revealing a fraction of the anger that raged within. Should I even bring up that we led the charge in turning the Reeve invasion away? He snapped. If humanity decided to take that same kind of stance, you'd be buried under the rubble of your ivory tower instead of standing on it looking down at the rest of us.
Lance Warder, that's enough!
Darla roared, interrupting him.
I will not have you defy the orders of this council. You are our right hand. You're part of humanity's spear no longer.
Lance stepped back. He clenched his jaw tightly as he stood in defiance of the Alcazar. Silence permeated the room for several moments as they stared down one another.
Perhaps we should find another operative for this mission and ground the crew of the Gladius until further notice,
the Jarog muttered. I strongly disagree, Andrew cut in. While this display may be unprofessional, Lance and his crew are the best resource we have. His reputation as a negotiator is spreading across the galaxy. No other SOATs have that notoriety. He's our best shot." Lance looked at the human council member to his left, on the outer edge of the Alcazar. He gave the SOAT a wink with his away eye.
"So be it," Darla huffed. "There are systems threatening war against the Alcazar for allowing humanity a seat on the Council and such a prominent position in galactic society. Old alliances have now become fragile and threaten to shatter at the slightest misstep. We will send you a dossier of the leaders threatening war, and we'll set up meetings with them. Your job is to negotiate. Show them humanity is more than just a bunch of rabid dogs that need to be put down. Do you think you can keep your temper in check long enough to prevent all-out civil war?"
Lance bit the inside of his cheek. Her condescending tone egged him on to come back with some sarcastic remark. Biting the inside of his cheek, he nodded in agreement. "Yes, ma'am," he muttered, after several moments of silence.
"Good. Then consult your multi-tool. You should be receiving those documents shortly,"
Darla replied. She shut off the channel. Lance shook his head before turning and leaving for his command center. As he stepped on it and a galaxy map flickered to life, the Alcazar message had come through. It was a list of 5 star systems. Each held a sphere of influence over dozens more, with trillions of lives under each of their influence. Shaking his head in disgust, he fought the urge to call his father. A rendezvous point was assigned for them to pick up a package before continuing their mission. Lance relayed the rendezvous point to the cockpit. A small ping, marked with an encryption signature, flickered over one of the further planets. The captain reached out and touched it. A letter flickered to life over the system. "I'm sorry about earlier. We all should be working together for the greater good, not squabbling amongst ourselves. If I may suggest, even though this world is the furthest from your starting point, that you begin here. I think there will be some interesting and useful information in this system for you." Andrew Carnegie the 12th. 2. New crewmate. "How long until you have a flight path plotted?" Lance asked, with the channel to the cockpit activated.
"I'd say 10 minutes,"
Trentlaw replied.
"If we're in a hurry, we could start a blind jump in the general direction until a path is calculated, drop out, correct course, and continue."
"Not necessary. There's no rush. When calculated, what's the ETA?"
2 days. Then we can decide where to go from there."
"Not necessary," Lance countered, as he sent the coordinates of the furthest planet forward. "That's our first stop."
"You sure?"
Justin asked after a few seconds of silence.
"It looks like there's some pretty tricky navigations that might be better to ease into from a different direction."
"I'm sure," Lance countered. "That's where we start."
"You're the captain," Justin relented. "We'll be underway shortly."
"Thank you." Lance shut the channel and stepped away from the command center. Getting into the elevator, he rode it to the crew quarters and stepped out. He walked over to Kolar's room and knocked.
"Enter!"
the Galileo shouted. Lance opened the door to see his prisoner hunched over his bed with some tiny tools, thread, and a pile of shells. "What are you doing?" the captain asked.
"Your security team said these protected the creatures inside. Shells, I believe they called them,"
Kolar said, as he slid one side of the string into a small hole he'd drilled into the shell.
"They are quite beautiful, and they're a little familiar, too."
The Galileo tapped the crest on his head before carefully threading a second one through. "Except your frills can move. Shells are rigid, immovable. What are you making? Lance asked, taking a few more steps in. Kolar lifted the project up. It was a necklace of intricate craftsmanship. Small shells were on the outer edges. They gradually grew larger until they met in the center with the largest of the set. "You make jewelry?" Lance asked. "There are no jewels on this. I believe the correct terminology would be shellry." "That sounds more like a stringy green vegetable, but okay, I'll bite." "What prompted this?" "I can't say I see a man of your military background making ornamental wear." "I saw some of the natives of that place wearing similar things. They were aesthetically pleasing, so I decided to try my hand at them," Kolar explained. "What do you think?" "I think that you could make a nice side business with those. Or they'd make good gifts with Christmas coming up." Kolar's eyes widened. Excitement overtook his face as he turned to Lance with a wide smile. "When does the deity begin his journey?" "You mean Santa?" Lance asked in slight confusion. Kolar nodded. "About a month. Why?" "I may have asked for Stephanie to put in a requisition request that should have been filled while we were back on Sol 3. "You can just call it Earth." Kolar shrugged before turning back to his work. "If you wouldn't mind, I'm going to be getting back to this," the Galio said, pointing at his pile of shells. "By all means," Lance said as he stepped out of the room. He stopped at the bulkhead and looked back. "If I could get one thing on this ship to make things a little more comfortable for you?" Kolar paused. He looked up from his necklace making and placed the shells down. He shrugged. "That interactive virtual reality I played on the Manifest Destiny was fun," Kolar replied. "You know we have fully interactive holographic gaming systems now, right? That's an antique from a bygone era. You sure you wouldn't want something a little more advanced?" "I really like the headset." "Sounds good. I'll see if I can't get one for you." The door shut. He walked to Raffin Squad's quarters. Dexter and Matthias fidgeted with their suits of armor while still in their swimsuits. "What are you guys doing?" Lance asked.
Stephanie pointed out that our actuators could be tightened by 3% to help increase reaction time, Matthias replied.
"What he said," Dexter added, nodding toward the sniper. "Speaking of Stephanie, have you seen her anywhere?"
"She's taking some of the crew to town with my poker set," Matthias said, pointing at the closed doors just to the right of their lodging.
"Thank you." Lance left the soldiers to their work. He opened the door to the game room. Stephanie sat at the head of the table. She already had a small pile of chips, while the 3 other non-human crew members had very few left. "You know, if you're teaching them how to play, it's typically common courtesy to go easy on them first, right?"
If I don't go hard on them, then they won't progress quickly," Stephanie replied.
"Maybe. But if you keep crushing them, then they won't enjoy playing anymore." The crew members nodded in agreement while pointing at Lance. "See? They're not having fun."
"Fine. I'll go easy on them moving forward," she huffed and relented,
giving some of her chips back. "Were you able to get the Santa costume?"
"I was, and about 10 pounds of coal with a bag to carry it all in," Stephanie replied. "He did ask me to requisition it, but I picked it up months ago."
"Good. Give it to him before the shipwide Christmas party."
"Already have it wrapped."
"Awesome." Lance gave a thumbs up, then pushed off the bulkhead. The doors shut as rumbling engines grew, indicating their jump. Returning to his quarters, he saw that Valdivia lay unconscious on his bed, letting out a soft snore. Going into his bathroom, he turned on the shower. Stripping down, he stepped in, got himself cleaned up, dried himself off, and stepped out. Folding his uniform, he put it back in place before retrieving his armor. Donning his armor, he ran a full-suit diagnostic. The captain spent his next few hours strolling around the ship, checking in with his crew. He held several conversations, learned about friends, family, and hobbies of those on duty. In the hangar, Scott sat on the Tat-Lev dropship and used its internal projectors to practice flying without the craft on. Judging by the flashes of light and how violently his chair shifted from side to side, the simulation must have been a rough one. Returning to his cabin, Lance paused, shaking his head. He lay down on the couch. Valdivia shifted. She was spread out, taking up the entire bed. Putting his head on the armrest, he fell into a dreamless sleep.
"What are you doing?"
Valdivia's voice cut through the darkness.
"You've got to get up."
A violent jostle snapped Lance awake. The Jarog stood over him, a hand on his shoulder. "What?" Lance asked, his mind in a fog as he sat up, wiping the drool from his chin.
"They wanted to let you sleep a little longer, but almost a full day is a bit much. On top of that, we're approaching the rendezvous to retrieve whatever package Justin keeps bringing up."
"I've been out for a full day?" Lance asked. His head throbbed as he sat up. "Must have been more tired than I thought."
"Yeah, well, wake up and get going. We're dropping out of our jump, and I'm assuming you want to be present on the bridge for this whole thing."
"Yeah. Yep, I do," Lance mumbled with a groggy voice. "Let's get going." Standing up, he took a deep breath and rubbed his eyes into focus. It took several steps for him to regain his balance. Getting into the elevator, they started to descend. "Have you ever slept so well you forgot what day it is?" Lance asked. Valdivia nodded, and he looked at her. "What day is it?" She cracked a smile before motioning at the opening doors.
"The day you're supposed to pick something up. Should I get you coffee?"
"That would be great. Let's wait to see what this package is first." Stepping out of the elevator, they walked to the cockpit where Justin was strapping himself in. "Approaching first sight. Stopping momentarily," Drentlock called out.
"Initiating drop,"
Justin replied. He slid his fingers over the projections before him. As they slowed, the spiral faded. A shift of blue overtook the windscreen. A massive ship appeared in front of them. It sported the emblem of the Alcazar station. Lance let out a whistle at the dreadnought before them. It made the Manifest Destiny look small. The captain stepped forward to get a better look at the near space station-sized craft.
"Holy crap,"
Justin muttered.
"That's a life ship,"
Valdivia pointed out.
"Never thought I'd see one."
"Life ship?" Lance asked.
"Most of the crew chooses to live their whole lives on those ships. Sometimes there are several generations that have passed. Only 2 or 3 are in existence." "We've got an inbound transmission,"
Justin called out.
"You want me to patch it through?"
"Go ahead," Lance replied with a nod. With a few taps on his projectors, a female Galio image appeared on their windscreen. She wore a hood that snugly fit her crest as she stared directly at Lance.
"SOAT vessel Gladius. This is Alcazar life ship Naru. Cut your engines and prepare to be boarded."
"Before I can comply to this order, for the safety of my crew, I need to know what you're bringing over," Lance countered. Annoyance spread across the Galio's face. With a huff, she shook her head.
"You're a SOAT trainee. You're here to pick up your new trainer,"
she replied, before cutting off the transmission. "Someone doesn't like their job," Lance muttered before tapping Justin on the shoulder. "Cut engines. The pilot obeyed. Lance turned.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?